Houston Real Estate Radio starts right now.
Welcome back to Houston Real Estate Radio. I'm Shannon Register, and I'm here in the studio with James Brown, and we have Jeff Shore Skyping in today. We are continuing our coast-to-coast update. We've been trying to give you updates from different parts of the country because we found that a lot of the things going on in the national news don't necessarily reflect the local market. So we're trying to get a coast-to-coast update, and Jeff Shore is out in California, so we're going to get a little bird's-eye view of what's going on in California. He is a real estate consultant who works with home builders all over the U.S., and he sees all the markets that are out there. So we definitely want to get an idea of what you see happening.
Well, it's there is a rebirth. There's no question about it. You know that when you look back to the 2000 to 2006 time frame, everybody was going crazy here in California as far as real estate goes. And then the old adage is that the wilder the party, the greater the hangover. So we really took it in the teeth here for a lot of years in real estate, and now it's as if somebody hit the switch and decided we're back to where we were, without even a pause in between. It's like the bad market never happened, especially in coastal California, where the major population centers are in California. It's nuts. It's crazy. And homes that are selling for $100,000 over the listed price. I was working with a home builder in Southern California, Irvine. This last week, they had a new community opened up, and on day one of their opening, they had over 1,000 people come through their model homes, which is just a zoo. It's just a sea of people coming through, and we're looking at waiting lists and campouts, and again, it's like the downturn never happened in California.
And see, that is not what I'm hearing when I listen to the national news.
I'll tell you why.
It sounds like California's in the tank.
Yeah. And well, first of all, when you're looking at the California economy broadly, there's no question about it. California is in a tank. But the issue that we're dealing with here is really between supply and demand. There's not a lot of supply in California. And because of that, home builders are just really able to kind of start getting some traction in buying land and building it. So the revenue is not coming in yet for the state. So the state financial woes continue to struggle because of the lack of building that's been going on. But the demand is sky high, and that's what's causing all of the uproar in California. We have a huge imbalance between sellers and would-be buyers.
What trends do you see now that the market's on the upswing as far as on the demand side? Are you, I know in Vegas, they're building new houses, but with smaller square footage than before the downside.
Yeah, and that's really going to largely depend upon what market segment you're going after. So, for example, if you look at Phoenix, Phoenix is another red hot market right now. But the strength of the market is in those smaller homes, lower priced homes in the perimeter and or on the perimeter of the greater Phoenix area. There's not a lot of activity on the upper end, because it takes longer to start that from scratch and open up a new community and build it along those lines. The same with California. The further inland you get off of the coast in California, the tougher the markets are. But there's strength just about everywhere in California right now.
What about the rental market?
It continues, interestingly enough, to be very, very strong throughout the West for rentals. There are as much demand as there is for new housing. There's still a lot of people, especially younger people, who are a little gun shy about seeing what their parents went through, and they're taking that tack that says, well, maybe I'll rent here for a while and sort of see how things are shaking out. So normally what you will see is when you come out of a real estate downturn, you're typically going to see a lot of first-time buyers who are pumping up the bottom of the market there and bringing some strength into it. We're not seeing that so much right now. We are seeing people who are making lateral moves out of one house and into another, but we're not necessarily seeing as many first-time buyers as we would have thought we would at this point. Again, in places like California or Phoenix or Las Vegas, there's still so much immigration, and we have not kept the pace for housing for people that are just coming into the country.
That's interesting what you said about the young people. I never thought about how all this foreclosure crisis was going to affect, the next generation and what they're having to see their parents go through.
Yeah, I think it's going on right now with a good friend of mine. He lost his house. He's now moved back in with his kids. And he's looking at it and saying, boy, didn't expect that to be at this point, in this place at this point in my life. But I think that's a common story for a lot of people. And I think it does send a sociological message to the kids. They look at it and they say, well, you lived in that house for 20 years and thought you were fat on the equity. And then the next thing you're out on the street. So, yeah, it'll scare you a little bit. There's no question. But I think the bottom line issue that we're dealing with is that economists will say that we need to build about 1.1 million homes in the United States every year to keep up with new demand. The fact of the matter is that over the last 5 years, we've averaged about 400,000, so about a third of what we needed to over the last 5 years. And even in 2012, when the numbers finally shake out, the numbers are going to come in at about 550,000 new homes built. That's still only half of what the market needs. So we continue to see a huge imbalance between supply and demand across the country.
So what do you think it would take to get those first-time buyers the confidence they need to take the plunge?
That's a really, really good question, and I think the answer is something that a lot of home builders or real estate professionals aren't necessarily going to like, but it's going to take time. It's going to take just that opportunity for them to look at it and say, okay, well, does this really make sense for me? But the other thing that it's going to take, and we are seeing this now, is a continued price spread between buy versus own, rent versus own. So we're already seeing that right now. Especially when you factor in mortgage interest deductions, the spread between owning and renting is getting greater and greater. And I think that will push more and more first-time buyers in to look at it and say, financially, I just can't afford to rent anymore. So I do think we're going to see it. There's one other factor out there, and that is that, Shannon, you said a little bit ago, wow, that's not what I'm hearing. Well, I think it's important for all of your listeners to understand that by the time the media is going to report their numbers, they're all lagging indicators. So when you look at where home prices are going, for example, or where sales are going, these are all sales that happened quite some time ago. And they don't necessarily give us the truest picture of what's happening right now. It doesn't mean that their numbers are inaccurate. It just means that they're lagging. In my opinion, the best information you're going to get right now on the state of the market, you're probably going to get it from a realtor or from a new home salesperson who's having to deal day by day with what's going on out there, with what's happening right now. So you might have a little sense of false confidence if you say, well, prices went up last year in my marketplace by 1%. Well, you know what? Last year was a long time ago in real estate terms. So if we're up to speed with what's going on today, it might influence us as to the decisions that we're going to make.
All right. What about international buyers? Are you seeing a lot of international buyers coming into California?
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And really, I think we're seeing
Cash
a lot of international buyers coming in on both coasts, and they are seeing what's happening with real estate and the real estate opportunities. Now, you see the international buyers on two different levels. One is those who are just opportunistic to want to come in and buy a home and raise their family, and it's the American dream and all of that. But the other thing that you're seeing, and this is particularly important as it relates to foreclosure, short sales, and shadow inventory, you're seeing international money that's coming in and buying 20, 30, 40, 50 homes at a time in the same geographic area. I'm working with a real estate company in Jacksonville, Florida, and they're working with a company that came to them and said, we basically have about $300 million that we want to invest in real estate. And we think Jacksonville is an up-and-coming market, so let's just go nuts. And they're just going through and they're just buying up distressed property all over the place. And that's not an uncommon tale.
Yeah, we're hearing that in other markets as well.
Right.
Sure.
So what neighborhoods, what segments, what areas out there in California are hot right now for investors?
Well, first of all, the closer you get to water in California,
the better.
The more the real estate is going to have that prime tag on it. So everybody wants to be in the coastal cities in California as far as real estate goes. So you are seeing, and this just frankly, it just kind of blows my mind. And you're seeing investors that are buying, $700,000, $800,000 homes in California that they have no interest in living in. They're going to rent them out for a while, flip them at some point. I don't even see how that pencils, but that's what they're doing. But the heavy duty, the sort of the industrial investor, if you will, the one that's going to buy 30, 40, 50 homes, they're going through, the San Joaquin Valley. They're seeing the agricultural cities like Bakersfield and Fresno and Stockton and Sacramento. And that's where you're seeing a lot of that action.
Jeff, we're going to have to go to a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk to you about your new book. It's very exciting. You have a new book out, so definitely want to discuss the 4-2 formula when we get back. We appreciate the market update. A lot of good information for our listeners.
Good, thank you.